Hello, today we are going to practice the yin pose saddle. Saddle pose is a great pose for your quads and your hip flexors, and in yang yoga it's known as Virasana or Supta Virasana. So Don is going to help me out with this. So I'm going to ask Don if he'll come forward onto hands and knees, come into your table pose, and we're just going to sit our hips back on our heels and see how that feels. Do you have any sensations in your knees?
No.
So you can play around with saddle. You can widen your knees, maybe take your knees a little wider. How you feeling? Sensations. So we want to come to our first edge in the pose. And 1 being the least felt sensation and 10 being the most sensation. So where would you say you are in this pose? You're
Probably 4.
feeling a 4. So that's a pretty good space to stay. And also how are your feet and ankles? Some people like to slide their heels out a little bit and sit in between their heels. It all depends how your ankles and feet feel. Feeling any sensations?
Everything feels fine.
Feels good. So then I would ask Don to just maybe lean back on his hands just a little bit. And this might be a little bit higher sensation, the target area. Where are you feeling your target areas?
Right now the quads.
The quads. And maybe hip flexors.
Not really.
So if I ask Don to lean back a little bit more on his hands, you would start to get into the lower back. So a little bit of back bend, and some people like to sit on blocks. So if somebody was having any knee issues, I would ask them to sit on a block or two. So if you just want to come up, I'll just show some of the modifications you could do if you were having any knee issues. And if that wasn't enough, I would give him 2 blocks to sit on. He could put a blanket under his knees, if any knee issues. And then if he wanted to lean back to get another target area, which would be his lower back, I could have him just rest his forearms on the bolster, and he could lean back a little bit more. And for some people, this is enough, just staying up on their hands. He could also come all the way down onto the floor without any props or using a prop. And if he wanted to get into his arms, I would ask him to take his arms over his head. So he would get into his arms, target area, lower back. But if his shoulders are tight, I would just say, just come to that first edge of sensation and just moving slowly over time. We would come down, maybe if it was okay with his body to come lying down, but I would just suggest to find your first edge of resistance. We'll hold for time, finding relative stillness, not being afraid to move or shift or come into maybe a second phase, second edge, but just moving slowly and just staying about that 3 to 5 sensations, dull, achy sensations of that bitter yin practice. So if this was not doable for someone at all, the knees were screaming, I would have them come forward. So just slowly come up and just take that block, extend your right leg forward, sit, place that block under your right sitting bone. So this is half saddle, and you could also take the left knee out a little wider. So first I would suggest this pose, half saddle before Sphinx pose. And how does this feel?
A 3 or 4.
3 or 4. So these are all modifications for saddle pose. And we always want to come out of a yin pose very slowly. So just see if you can slide your legs forward, remove any props underneath you. And I would have Don come down into resonance pose, lying on his back. And just resting there, noticing any sensations he's feeling.